Maria's hands were cracked from the cold, her fingers red and raw beneath the thin gloves that barely protected her from the early morning frost. The streets of Brookdale were quiet, blanketed in a thin layer of snow that hadn't yet melted under the pale winter sun. At 46, Maria had learned to move silently through the world, unnoticed, forgotten. Like the trash she swept from the sidewalks, dressed in an oversized city-issued orange vest, she looked older than her years, worn down by time, solitude, and a lifetime of small losses. She had started the job a year ago, grateful for anything steady after losing everything in the divorce. Once, not too long ago, she had a home with a garden, laughter at the dinner table, bedtime stories. Now, it was just the rustle of garbage bags and the whistle of wind between buildings. Her son Lucas had been just 6 when the court handed full custody to her ex-husband Jack, a man with a better lawyer and a colder heart. Since then, Maria hadn't seen her boy, not once, not even a photo. Jack had made sure of that. It was lunchtime now, her break, the only quiet moment she could claim in a day of endless sweeping. She sat on an overturned bucket near a graffiti-covered alley, unwrapped the wax paper from her lunch, half of a peanut butter sandwich she had saved from the community shelter that morning. No chips, no drink, just bread and a little spread. She was just about to take a bite when a rustling noise behind the dumpster made her pause. Slowly, cautiously, out stepped a large German shepherd. Emaciated, with ribs visible through the patches of matted fur, and eyes so deeply sad they seemed to carry the weight of stories untold. He stood trembling, one paw lifted slightly off the ground, as if unsure whether to move forward or flee. His eyes met hers, haunted, yet pleading. Maria froze. For a moment the two simply stared at each other. Then, with an exhale that clouded the air in front of her, Maria looked down at her sandwich, then back at the dog. Her stomach grumbled, her fingers were numb, but she tore the sandwich in half anyway and set one piece gently on the cold concrete in front of her. "Here," she said softly, her voice hoarse from years of silence. "You probably need this more than I do." The dog hesitated, sniffed the air, then crept forward inch by inch. When he reached the food, he looked up at her again, just once, before devouring it in seconds. But even as he ate, he didn't turn his back to her. His eyes never left hers. Maria smiled, her lips trembling. Something about the animal struck a chord deep in her chest, like recognizing a soul that had also been abandoned by the world. A voice interrupted the stillness. "Careful! That dog looks dangerous!" A man passing by had paused on the sidewalk, his brow furrowed as he watched the scene unfold. Maria didn't look up. She just kept watching the dog. "No one's dangerous when they're starving," she murmured. And in that moment something passed between her and the animal. Not fear, not caution, but understanding. She started calling him Ranger 3 days after their first meeting. It was the way he followed her, never too close, never too far, his presence steady like a silent guardian. Every morning, as Maria stepped out from her modest one-room apartment, tucked behind the laundromat, she'd find Ranger waiting near the alley, sitting still in the gray light, tail thumping once in greeting. He never barked, never whined, just walked behind her as she swept the curbs, collected trash, and cleared broken bottles from cracked sidewalks. "Like a soldier," she murmured one morning, her breath clouding in the chill. "Like a damn good soldier." So she called him Ranger. Every day, without fail, she saved a piece of her meager meal for him. Sometimes it was a slice of bread with a smear of jelly, other days a boiled egg, or the corner of a granola bar from the charity pantry. Ranger never begged. He always waited until she offered, then gently accepted the food, his eyes filled with something Maria couldn't quite name. Respect, maybe? Or trust. Even as he regained strength, even as his coat filled in with new fur and the sharpness returned to his gaze, Ranger remained wary of others, anyone else who tried to approach him. Passers-by offering snacks, other workers, even a curious child, he would avoid, His body stiffened, his eyes narrowed, but with Maria, he was calm, at ease. When she sat down for her break, he would rest his head on her boot. If she was tired and leaned against a lamppost, he would sit facing outward, watching for any threat like a sentry on duty. Maria found herself talking to him more. "You know," she whispered one evening as they sat in the shadow of a shuttered bakery, "Lucas would have been your age now, if kids aged like dogs, I mean." She chuckled dryly, her voice cracking. "He was 6 when I lost him, bright eyes, laughed all the time. I think he liked dogs, but Jack never let us have one." Ranger tilted his head, as if listening. Maria wiped at her eyes with the sleeve of her oversized coat. "Sometimes I wonder if he remembers me at all, if he hates me for not fighting harder." Ranger leaned in, nudging her hand with his nose. That was the thing about him, he never asked anything, just stayed. But the day she collapsed, he roared. It was a Tuesday, and the rain hadn't let up since morning. Cold, unforgiving sheets poured from the sky, turning gutters into rivers. Maria had been coughing all week, but she pushed through her shift. She always did. No one else was going to pay the rent. Around noon, while sweeping the sidewalk near an abandoned storefront, her vision blurred. Her knees buckled. She crumpled to the ground without a sound, the rain soaking through her coat in seconds. Ranger barked, loud, furious. He darted into the street, snarling and barking at oncoming cars, circling Maria's body protectively. Drivers honked, brakes screeched, people gathered. Someone finally called 911. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics hesitated. "Is that your dog?" one asked. "She doesn't have anyone," an old woman from the corner store said, holding an umbrella. "Just him." It took 2 METs and a can of beef jerky to coax Ranger back far enough so they could lift Maria into the ambulance. But as soon as the doors closed, he chased it down the street, soaking wet and howling. Maria woke up 3 days later in a sterile hospital room, IV in her arm, light blinking overhead. She turned her head slowly and gasped. Ranger was curled on the floor beside her bed, his fur still damp in places, his head resting on his paws. Someone had given him a towel to lie on. His tail wagged once. A nurse stepped in, smiling. "He hasn't left since they brought you in," she said gently. "Wouldn't eat, wouldn't sleep, just laid there guarding." Maria reached out a trembling hand. "Good boy," she whispered. Good boy." And for the first time since she'd lost her son, someone stayed. It had been years since Maria had walked the streets of Willow Park, a once bustling neighborhood now fading under the weight of new developments and rising rent signs. She didn't come here often. Too many memories clung to these sidewalks, but city maintenance had assigned her a one-day cleanup on Main and 7th, just a few blocks from the house she used to call home. Ranger padded beside her as always, his head level with her hip, eyes scanning every movement, every sound. Maria's thoughts were elsewhere. She tried not to glance at the brownstone on the corner, the one with the red door. Lucas's old bedroom faced the street. Her heart ached. That's when she heard it, the voice. "Well, look who finally crawled out of the gutter." Maria turned slowly, her body stiffening at the sound. There he was, Jack. He looked older, sure, but richer too. Expensive coat, shiny shoes, same sneer. The years had hardened him further, turned his once charming arrogance into something colder, crueler. "I didn't recognize you under all that filth," Jack said, eyes scanning her reflective vest and work gloves. "Though, I guess this is exactly where I thought you'd end up." Maria stood her ground, her voice quiet but clear. "I'm just doing my job." Jack laughed, shaking his head. "Job? You call picking up trash a job? You abandon your family for this?" "You know that's not true," she said, her throat tightening. "You took everything. You made sure I couldn't see Lucas." He stepped closer. "You didn't fight hard enough, and now look at you, begging like a stray dog." At that moment, Maria's voice trembled. "I just want to see him. Just once, please, Jack. Just one time." Jack's face twisted with disgust. "Over my dead Maudie!" And then without warning he shoved her. Not a hard push, but enough to send her stumbling backward, landing on the sidewalk with a sharp cry. Her elbow struck the pavement. Pain shot up her arm. Before Maria could even blink, Ranger was no longer beside her. He was airborne. With a guttural snarl that froze the street, Ranger launched himself at Jack, his powerful jaws clamping down on the man's forearm. Jack screamed, stumbling back as the dog snarled, eyes blazing with fury, teeth bared. Blood speckled the pavement. "Get this monster off me!" Jack shouted, trying to shake Ranger off. But Ranger didn't move. He stood between Maria and Jack, growling with a ferocity that made onlookers step back. A small crowd had gathered. Someone pulled out a phone. Another shouted for the police. 2 officers arrived minutes later, hands hovering near their tasers, until they saw Maria, still on the ground, shaking. "Ma'am, are you okay?" "He pushed her!" a woman from across the street yelled. "That man assaulted her and the dog protected her." "I saw it too," another said. "She didn't do anything. The guy was screaming in her face." The officers turned to Jack, who clutched his bleeding arm and spat venom through gritted teeth. "You're all crazy. That dog should be put down." But no one agreed, especially not the cameras, now flashing from local reporters who had arrived just as Ranger sat back on his haunches beside Maria, alert, silent, still ready to strike if needed. Maria slowly got up, brushing glass off her coat, her eyes wide with disbelief. One of the officers looked at her, then at Ranger. "Looks like he saved your life," Maria swallowed hard. "He's my best friend." By nightfall, the story was all over local news. Headlines blazed, from trash to triumph, the woman and her guardian dog. Photos showed Maria in her reflective vest, standing beside Ranger with her hand on his back, both staring into the distance. The footage went viral. In every frame, in every image, Ranger stood tall, not as a stray anymore, but as a protector. And for the first time in years, Maria didn't feel powerless. She felt seen. The days that followed were a whirlwind. Maria had never been the subject of headlines before, but now her name appeared in newspapers, on news websites, and even in a heartfelt local television segment that played on repeat for almost a week. The footage of Ranger protecting her from Jack and the raw emotion in her voice when she simply said, "He's my best friend," touched thousands. Among those thousands, one group paid special attention. It started with a phone call. "Ms. Alvarez?" The man's voice was gentle, professional. "My name is Tom Granger. I'm with Valor Paws, a non-profit organization that works with retired military and police dogs. I think we may know your dog." Maria's heart skipped. "You mean Ranger?" "Yes," Tom said, or he used to go by another name, Sergeant. He served with the U.S. Army's K-9 unit. Maria sat down slowly on the edge of her bed, hand trembling. "I don't understand." "We've been reviewing the footage. The way he moves, his markings, his eyes, everything matches. We've pulled his old records, and we believe Ranger was part of a rescue unit in Afghanistan. He saved 6 soldiers during a building collapse, but during a later mission, there was an explosion. He went missing. We thought he was gone." Maria couldn't breathe for a moment. "And now?" Tom's voice softened. "Now he's found you." 2 days later, they came in person, a pair of former soldiers, tears in their eyes as they kneeled before Ranger. He didn't bark, he didn't flinch. He simply stepped forward, gently pressed his head into one man's chest, and closed his eyes. "He remembers?" one whispered. They confirmed everything. Ranger had been awarded honor. He had been trained for search and protection, but after the blast, when his unit couldn't find him, he was listed as KIA, killed in action. Somehow he had been picked up in the States, lost in a broken system, and ended up on the streets. But despite everything, he had survived, and he had chosen Maria. And that meant something. "We'd like to support you," Tom told her, his eyes warm. "It's clear Ranger belongs with you now. We want to make sure you both live comfortably." We've arranged a small home just outside the city near our animal therapy center. You'll have steady work there, nothing heavy, just helping care for animals like Ranger. You won't have to worry about rent, food, or bills." Maria stared at them, stunned. Why would you do this?" He smiled. "Because you gave half a sandwich to a soul the world had forgotten, and he never forgot." When they showed her the cottage, Maria cried. It wasn't fancy, but it had a garden, a porch swing, and inside a bed for her, and one already waiting for Ranger, along with toys and a plaque, "Welcome home, hero." She started her job the following week. Every morning, she fed and bathed animals, many of them retired service dogs. She spoke gently to them. She understood them. Ranger remained by her side, no longer just a shadow, but a partner. And then, one quiet afternoon, everything changed again. She was cleaning out the feeding station when she felt it, a presence. She turned. A boy stood near the entrance, tall for his age, with shaggy dark hair and eyes that seemed far older than 14. Ranger was the first to move. He stood up from his nap in the sun, trotted over, and sniffed the boy's hand. The boy didn't pull away. He knelt down and hugged the dog, pressing his face into the thick fur. Maria stepped closer, heart thudding. "Can I help you?" The boy stood, his voice quiet, almost a whisper. "Mom?" Maria froze. Lucas. He was taller now and thinner than she remembered, but his voice, she would have known that voice anywhere. She stepped forward, tears already forming. "Lucas?" He nodded, eyes brimming. "I saw you on the news. I wasn't supposed to, but I couldn't stop watching. I needed to find you." Maria fell to her knees, arms wide. He ran into them. She held him like she'd been waiting her entire life to breathe again. Ranger sat beside them, quiet and still, watching over the reunion with the calm of someone who understood the weight of destiny. And as the wind rustled the trees around them, Maria knew all of it. Every loss, every cold night, every aching memory had led to this moment. The boy, the dog, the mother, together again. Lucas had watched the video over and over. The woman in the orange vest shielding a dog. The German shepherd lunging to protect her. His mother. His father. The man in the footage being held back. Everything Lucas had believed started to unravel. For years, Jack told him Maria was unstable, not fit to be a mother. And Lucas had believed him. But now, at 14, he wasn't a little boy anymore. He could feel the truth. He had to see her for himself. When Jack left town, Lucas took the train alone and walked to the animal center where Maria worked. Ranger met him first, calm, gentle. The dog rested his head on Lucas's shoulder like he already knew. That simple touch shattered the wall between them. Maria didn't ask questions. She just held him. In the weeks that followed, Lucas kept coming. First in secret, then openly as their story spread again. This time not as a viral clip, but as a story of healing. The community rallied behind Maria, and soon the court granted her visitation. Then weekends, then holidays. Ranger never left their side, always watching, always present. One afternoon, as Lucas sat with Maria on the porch swing, he asked, "Do you think he knows?" She smiled. "About us? I think he's always known." He leaned his head on her shoulder. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner. You came when you were ready," she whispered. Their story traveled far. Letters arrived from strangers. Someone sent a collar with Ranger's name embroidered in gold. One message simply read, "You gave him a sandwich, he gave you a family." And it was true. At dusk, Maria would sit and watch Lucas and Ranger playing in the yard, the light wrapping around them like peace itself. In those moments, she felt something she hadn't known in years. Home. And some nights, when it was just her and Ranger again, she'd stroke his fur and say, "One half of a sandwich." That's all it took. Ranger would look up, tail tapping the floor. as if to say, "I remember." Because sometimes the smallest kindness becomes the start of everything, and the ones we rescue become the ones who rescue us. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a woman, a lost boy, and a loyal dog who found each other when the world had forgotten them. Maria didn't have much to give, but she gave what she had, and in return she received something greater than she ever imagined: a protector, a second chance, and a family reborn. Sometimes, all it takes is half a sandwich to change a life. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Amazing Paws Stories, where we bring you the most heartwarming tales of animal rescue, second chances, and the beautiful connections that remind us what it truly means to be human. Until next time, stay kind and never underestimate the power of a single act of compassion. Subscribe now and be part of our journey, because every paw has a story, and some stories change lives.